Hi there, I'm John Michael Garapi and this is Popcorn Roulette. Each episode I invite a guest on the show, they suggest a movie, and then I go and watch the movie and we talk about the movie. Today I have with me John Russo. John, how you doing?
I am doing well, thank you.
This is your second episode.
This is my second episode.
We talked about Christopher Nolan's
the first time.
Following in the previous episode. Yep. And today, what did you bring for us today?
Today we're going to be talking about Spirited Away.
By Hayao Miyazaki.
Yes. Is that how you pronounce his first name?
Hayao.
Hiyao.
Yeah, I've heard also Hayao Miyazaki, but I don't think that's correct.
I always said Hiyao, but that's obviously wrong because I'm sure you did your research.
I could be wrong. I don't think I'd actually bank on that. This is nothing official. Before we do that, though, we have to get to the popcorn that we made. The first episode, I asked you what you wanted me to bring for the episode, and you said you wanted popcorn, and then I cheated you, and I brought Mike and Ike's popcorn-flavored candy.
It was all right.
So I figured I owed you this.
All right.
Here's the problem with the popcorn is you burned through all the popcorn conversation we had while I was popping this popcorn.
That's true. You're right. Here it is.
Yeah.
It's
no,
good.
I accidentally used garlic-flavored olive oil, and I was afraid the garlic flavor would be too much.
Can't taste it at all.
Can't taste it at all. That's funny.
Maybe it's at the bottom.
Yeah.
Maybe we should reach down there
and dig in. Oh. I love this poppers. Poppers just like a $10 thing on Amazon. They're just cheap and flexible. Like we were talking, I haven't the faintest clue. Maybe you can actually do it with a bowl, but you have to actually at least stick a lid on it. But anyways.
Do you get a commission for each one sold?
Yeah. Well, I had to actually turn it around so we couldn't actually see the name of the company on the front.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
So we're talking about Spirited Away, starring Rumi Hiragi, Devay Chase, and directed by Hayao Miyazaki. Why did you choose Spirited Away?
I wanted to do a Miyazaki movie because I really love his movies. I figured this one it's not my favorite, but it was probably one of his most popular. It's probably the one that popularized him in America.
This movie specifically, this is the highest grossing movie in Japan. You realize that?
No, I did not. I'm not surprised.
This is, for comparison's sake, the second highest grossing movie in Japan is Titanic. The third highest is Frozen. There are two American movies sitting underneath this, but this movie has captured the Japanese attention. Probably would have captured American attention a little bit more. Disney got the rights to Spirited Away, but then they kind of buried it when they realized they didn't have the franchising for it. So it could have been that popular in the United States, it just never was.
Yeah.
When was the first time you actually watched Spirited Away?
I actually watched it in theaters.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
So how old were you in 2001?
In 2001,
Let's do some simple math here. Let's tell the audience how old you are now. Let's do that.
Well, I'm 33 now.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm 33. I had to think about that. I'm old enough that I have to think about it now. So what month did it come out in?
Oh, I don't know. Let's just say January.
If it came out in January, my birthday hadn't happened yet.
We're getting very specific here.
So I would have been, actually, wait, how many years ago is that? That's 18 years ago.
Yeah.
So I was...
I love finding out how you figure out how old you are in certain years.
I was probably 14.
The Magic the Gathering expansion that was out during the time period was Odyssey. Can you figure it out off of that?
No, I wasn't playing Magic at that time.
That's how my mind operates. What was 2003 like? Oh, it was Mirrodin.
I was 13 or 14.
Yeah.
Or maybe 15. I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah.
Around that.
Tell me what Spirited Away is about.
It's a modern day fairy tale. Probably the closest thing you can get to it is akin to like Alice in Wonderland, where a 10-year-old girl, she's moving to a new home and she goes into this old abandoned theme park with her family. They find some food, their parents gorge on it, and they turn into pigs. And she has to find work in this old Japanese bathhouse that services the spirits and befriends spirits. And
what type of girl is Chihiro?
At the beginning, she's kind of like your typical 10-year-old girl. Little pouty, doesn't want to do anything, a little terrified of everything. But throughout the movie, she matures. It's kind of a coming-of-age-ish story.
So why don't we talk about that? Where does Chihiro pull her strength from in this movie? Because she starts off as being scared of everything. And at some point in time, she just seems to roll up her sleeves and get work done and actually be, there's a huge difference between the first scene where we see her run down the stairs, in a panic, and just the next time she approaches those stairs and just walks up them. So what happened? Where's that change?
That's an interesting question. I think a lot of it was internal. She realized that she had needed to get things done, but I think a lot of it was the friendships that she made, and with all the weird creatures, and the successes that she had, and the struggles. I'm not quite.
Well, let's jump around to some
Sure.
extent.
Yeah.
I got a question for you. Is Yababa, who is the witch in charge of
The bathhouse,
the
yeah.
bathhouse, is she a bad person or not?
I wouldn't say she's a bad person. She's definitely antagonistic in the story.
Yeah.
She's greedy. That's the.
Yes,
She's
yes.
definitely greedy. I don't know if her heart's in the right place, but
Right.
she's not.
She's got some
she's
sort of
not the worst person. She's definitely not a one-note bad guy.
She's got some sort of strange rule about having to accept anybody who asks for work, and that's never really pulled into it. It's just like,
Yeah,
why
it's
did I
just
choose to do this?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, Yababa. You just noticed the plot hole in your own movie. Why did you choose to do this?
Yeah, I don't know. I did look up some of the things in the movie, but that wasn't one of them. It was kind of like it was almost like you wouldn't even hear it if you weren't really paying attention.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, why do I have to accept everyone who asks for work?
yeah. Well, I got one more question while we're just talking about characters.
Yep.
So let's talk about No Face for a second here.
yeah.
Like we have, what is No Face in the first place?
No Face is a spirit that absorbs the energy around him. He kind of has no personality outside of the bathhouse, but once he goes inside, he wants to please people, and then he eats it like the little frog dude. And the frog dude is super greedy, so he starts becoming like this greedy hoarder that just wants to eat and consume, which I feel like a lot of the bathhouse, that's kind of like everyone wants the gold, everyone wants to.
Well, a lot of this movie is about consumption. So why
Yes.
don't we actually just talk about that while
Yeah.
we're at it? Like, what is Miyazaki telling us about how we consume things?
One of the things I can say about that is I actually read an essay, like a scholarly
Yeah,
essay.
no, tell us what's the premise of your essay. Give us the first couple of chapters.
Well, it wasn't my essay. I did
Chapters,
not
I say.
write the essay.
Paragraphs, yes.
And I should have actually written down the the author so I could
You could
quote him.
reference him, yeah.
So you could put that. I'll send it to you. But it's about traditional values being kind of converted into a more Western capitalist culture.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that headbutting of the traditional Shinto values where everything has its worth. That's what the spirits are. Every object has its own spirit, and that you should appreciate and be thankful for that object because it kind of has this little god that lives inside of it. In comparison to the Western idea of capitalism, where it's I want to get as much money, I want to get as much food, I want to get as much as things as I
The
possibly
traditional
can.
view of man has dominion over the world,
Yes.
and I get to exploit. No, obviously, we're at a different stage right now than we were back in the Victorian time period, but there's a very good reason why Miyazaki sets us all at a theme park that's based on Meiji time period architecture, because the Meiji period was this very strange period in Japanese history where they really want to emulate the West,
Yeah.
but they're also looking back at the Edo period. All of this Edo-style architecture is around us, but it's all Western-style, theme park ideal going on.
Yeah.
A
So-
veneer.
Yes, there's a veneer and there is the consumerism.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the fact that the traditional veneer, but underneath is the consumption.
So here's another question for you, because a lot of people like this movie. It's got 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is spectacular for any movie. He's talking about environmentalism. He's talking about how we should appreciate Shintoism or a belief in spirits. And how come this doesn't come off as preachy? Because this should hit people the wrong way. This should hit people that have an opposite viewpoint, that we really should be taking advantage of the world that we're living in. Those people should really have a problem with this movie, but they don't seem to. Why?
Well, I think one of the reasons is because they even though there was this anti-capitalistic, anti-Western theme, they kind of showed another side of the Western society with Zeniba. So we have the two witches,
Two twin sisters.
They're twin sisters. They look exactly the same.
Which
I'm
is-
pretty sure they
which
like
is-
even have the same rings.
Yeah, it was just, I think it's the final, like, oh, really? Because there's a lot of oh, reallys going on in this plot. It's like, oh, okay, I guess this is what's going on.
Well, yeah, I
Zeniba
mean,
being
it's like
introduced, oh, I'm her twin sister. Is another, like, okay, sure, whatever.
It's also, I think, because Miyazaki only draws one old person. Because the same like design pops up in Howl's Moving Castle as well,
Yeah.
almost exactly. Like
That's
it's
funny.
a little like the squat, round old woman with a giant nose.
We know that Miyazaki is, like, controlling almost everything in these. He has, like, an auteur's touch as opposed to Disney,
yeah.
who has a collaborative touch.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a reason for everything, and it is very Alice in Wonderlandy. The more narrative structure, definitely.
Yeah.
It is just kind of like, oh, this is happening now. Oh, this is happening now. Oh,
Yeah.
now No Face is vomiting everywhere.
Let me-
The stink spirit is filling the entire thing with like feet of horrible goop.
Yeah, let me get to the negative review and get it out of the way here, because this is about as good as Place as any.
You didn't let me. Actually, you didn't let
Yeah,
me
go
finish.
right ahead. Finish the
You didn't let-
question.
So anyway, yeah.
So
this
why
is-
isn't it preachy?
Yeah, I think it's told in the form of a fairy tale, which are by definition kind of preachy. It's told very beautifully, though. And like I said, there's the anti-capitalism, but also there's Zeniba, who is like this very grandmotherly in a Western. You see like her crocheting.
She
lives
feels
in,
a lot like a traditional witch, actually.
Yeah,
they
like a
call her
Western-
witch, but
like a Western
She is
witch.
like a Western witch.
But also she's a good person. She's like a grandmother.
Yeah.
They like literally like she's like, oh, call me Granny.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
like there's that other side that shows that like Western might have like this capitalism which we're not so sure about, but it also has things that are good about it as
Which
well.
is interesting, because I didn't actually really think about it. Like, at the end of the movie, Chichiro ends up calling Yubaba grandmother.
Yes.
I presume that's a spillover from being mysteriously incredibly close to Zeniba, like,
Yeah.
in a very short amount of time.
Yep.
But, like, that she now sees Yubaba as like a family member almost.
Well, I think despite her harsh edges, she helps Chihiro grow up.
Yeah. Let me get to that negative review. Like I said beforehand, 97% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yep.
So really hard to come across negative reviews. Oftentimes when you have negative reviews that there's only 3% disagree with, many of the reviews are stupid.
Yeah. Did you find a good one?
I found this, I didn't find a great one. This actually comes from efilmcritic.com by David Cornelius. He says, the second act of the story hits a wall. The plot becomes as freeform as the characters, and we're treated to a series of occasionally confusing, rarely entertaining episodes in which our heroine explores the strange new world. There's stuff about, among other things, a giant baby, a mischievous spirit named No Face, and a stink spirit. None of this makes much sense, but it's not really supposed to. It's all dreamlike and such, but it's not very interesting. The funny parts aren't funny. The thrilling parts don't thrill. For this entire middle section of the movie, I'd say an entire hour, I found myself bored. Utterly, totally bored. So this was actually a problem, like if I was to boil down the negative reviews, that seems to be the problem. A lot of people have a problem with the Act 2 of this movie. Can you see where they're coming from, or do you think that their opinion's not really appropriate?
Oh, definitely. I wasn't bored. I thought it liked the imagery, the music, even what was happening. It wouldn't say it was thrilling, but it was kind of like weird horror movie-ish like episodes.
Let's talk about Ma, because this is something that comes up. I'm not sure if they're getting bored because of this, but it's certainly something that might be contributing to it. So Miyazaki likes to use a lot of Ma. And what Ma, we oftentimes use the word negative space when we're talking about Ma. Specifically, it's a period where we pause and reflect over what we've all just seen. It's not very common in Western culture movies. Miyazaki really exploits it.
Yep.
One of the most obvious scenes is on the train ride going to see Zeniba. We just sit on a train and watch Chichiro and No Face sit side by side. Them sitting together is very short, but it's very small and very subtle. I wonder, how you feel about this process of using these reflective moments, or Chichiro just sitting on a bench with her rice ball in hand, looking out into the water, and not really doing anything with that.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love it. I love the fact that it takes the time to do those little things, showing her like eating the things, even like her stopping to like hit her shoes in.
Right, right. It's
But-
very
and-
detail-oriented.
and,
A
like-
lot of Miyazaki stuff is detail-oriented.
Oh yeah, and they're like beautiful paintings, reflecting on a beautiful painting.
I've
like
come to the conclusion that Miyazaki might be the most observant person in the world, just off of how often there's a story that they end up talking about oftentimes, about how Haku, when he's a dragon, he clings to the wall like he's a newt, he falls to the ground like he's a snake falling out of a tree, and then he starts growling and snapping like he's a dog.
Yep.
And like the general story is about, oh, how these animators don't quite understand exactly what Miyazaki is doing. But the same as actors, it's like Miyazaki just took a couple seconds of watching an animal move and applied it to 3 other animals in his head,
Yep.
like bing, bing, bing. He's been watching everything this entire time, and it all comes out in everything he animates.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. No, like I said, the animation is like spot on.
yeah. While we're talking about negative space,
Yeah.
this is a musical daily double.
I am not
So we're going to talk about Joe
Hisashi.
Hisaishi. Joe
Hisaishi?
Hisaishi's soundtrack. So obviously his soundtrack has a tremendous influence on this. I know you like the music because I've seen a music book kicking around of Spirited Away in your house.
I think that was one of the movies that made me want to
Yeah.
learn how to play piano.
Have you? How much could you play? If I like drag the piano out over here, could you just
Oh.
like no?
None right now.
You need some practice.
Yeah, I'd need some practice.
All right.
I used to be able to play Haku's theme.
I want to listen to just one summer's day.
Yes.
The opening, the immediate opening of this movie. That's
A lot of
respond to that.
rests. It's a
Yes,
lot
it
of
is a lot of
rests.
rest.
Yeah. I think it kind of sets the tone that it's going to take its time and you're going to have to notice every note. You got to pay attention.
I think you're right. I mean, I think it draws us right into the story because it's making sure that we listen to everything,
Yep.
you know, which perfectly matches the style where you're pulling in all these little details.
Yeah.
Let's jump forward a little bit. Miyazaki, he doesn't use scripts.
Didn't know that.
He doesn't use them. He storyboards everything.
Okay, that makes sense because he's a manga
because
artist
he's
as well.
an animator
Yeah.
and he's done manga as well. But like he also doesn't make the second half of his movie until they start animating. So he
Really?
kind of does this without a tight wire. He's just like goes right off the edge and then figures out where they're going to go. I don't think I have a question for this. No, I do have a question for this. I forgot what I put down in my notes. So is this noticeable when you're watching the movie? Are you able to actually see how this is just kind of being made up as you go along?
Maybe. I mean, if like, I'd have to really think about where the halfway point is, but maybe that's that point, that the point where it starts becoming a little bit more episodic, and then the relatively quick wrap up, which I mean didn't bug me at all. But
Yeah.
But obviously it bugged that 3%. I'll tell you one thing that I looked up because it was bugging my wife was there were so many frogs and frog people.
Yeah.
Apparently frogs are good fortune in the Shinto religion.
Oh, are they?
So it makes sense that someone who is really greedy would want a lot of frogs working for her.
You know, the funny thing about Miyazaki is that he's also a bit of a depressing guy. He also says that the greatness of a mind is determined by the depth of its suffering. I don't actually have any question for that either. I just find that really interesting. What I actually find interesting is the fact that Miyazaki thinks that children should only watch animated features once or twice per year. It's really funny because that's his job, and he's saying like, oh, you shouldn't be watching.
He's really saying you should
animation.
only watch mine.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's saying. I'm sure if we asked him, he'd be like, well, yeah, you know. But like, why do you think he has this opinion.
I think that's very interesting. I
Yeah.
mean, there's definitely, like, go a little bit off topic, there's kids get too much screen time
Yeah.
regardless. I don't know why he would limit that to.
Well, let me jump around also
Yeah.
at the same exact time, because Miyazaki's idea of a good movie evidently is really scary for kids. I
Yes.
can't imagine a 7-year-old
Oh,
not
yeah,
being
terrified
freaked out
my
while watching
wife.
that. Why is that appropriate to be showing this to our children in the first place? Because obviously tons of people show Spirited Away to their children.
Yeah.
Like, why do we think that a movie that scares children this much is actually a good idea?
As a father.
Yeah, as a father.
Um,
Eventually, your daughter will grow up. She'll be 7. Will
Yeah.
you be showing her Spirited Away? The answer is absolutely. I know that answer.
yeah, yeah. My wife might push it to 10,
Yeah.
but I don't know. Like, it's this probably the same reason why fairy tales used to cut off their toes and the wolf like actually ate people.
Yeah.
Scaring children teaches. I mean, fear is a perfectly reasonable emotion, and there's no reason why we should not teach our children how to fear.
Yeah.
I guess. I don't know. That's just me rambling on,
Yeah.
but.
Unfortunately, we're pretty much out of time. I got one last question
All right,
before we
I'll
actually
try to
do
be
this.
quick.
All right. What kind of woman will Chihiro grow up to be?
I think she'll grow up to be a problem solver. I think she'll grow up to be someone who respects tradition a little bit more than maybe even her parents. I think it kind of steeled her and shaped her, but didn't break her.
All right. It was great having you on, John. We
All right.
only had so much time. Unfortunately, 30 minutes passes in a very short amount of time
It does.
sometimes. Would you like to promote my show?
Oh, yes. So I'm in this wonderful radio play written and directed by John Michael Garrett.
Oh, well, I didn't plan to talk about this, but thank you, John.
It's based off of it's in the public domain,
It's
right?
in the public domain. Say hello to Blackjack.
It's a manga called Say Hello But to Blackjack. And
Yeah.
I play the main character, and it's pretty good.
Yeah, just pretty. You know, he does an okay job.
I do an okay job,
I
I
had to
guess.
really work with him to get these lines out.
Yeah.
But
Beatings. There were beatings.
many beatings. Thank you, John. Thank you for coming down.
All right.
Thank you, guys. Subscribe, like, you know the deal. Have a good night. Bye-bye.